Hello Gothic friends, this is Alice and you are in Gothic land. Welcome again to another video. Today I want to talk about books and it's going to be about New Year's resolutions list of books. Okay, have you got yours done yet? No idea where to start. So today I'm going to help you with that. I'm going to give you some suggestions of Gothic novels that you can start using and start reading if this is the first time that you approach the Gothic. If it's not the first time but you want to reread things, you can do. What I'm going to give you is the list of books that have influenced me more in my Gothic and language life, because as you know, I teach the language through Gothic a lot of times. And one of the things that impacted me and made my language move on was actually to read original texts. I know that this is something that a lot of people worry about, but when you have achieved the first certificate level, you can actually start diving into this kind of text and this level. Okay, so you know, it's very important to organize your brains, to organize your readings. So what I'm going to do is give you a book per month. So I'm going to give you 12 books that they are recommendations. You can read them in that order or not, that's up to you. And why I'm gonna give you this order of reading these books, this specific order, is because a lot of them, apart from the fact that they go from the, well, not necessarily the oldest to the newest, not necessarily of what I've read in my life, but they're gonna go chronologically. This is what I'm trying to say. They're gonna go, I'm gonna give them to you chronologically. Some of them even coincide with the month they were published originally, so that's really nice. And the idea behind this is that you can see the evolution of the language as well. You can see how the original texts had a specific language, and how the language has moved on and has adapted to the times a little bit as well. Also, I'm not just going to give you English writings or English Gothic literature. I'm going to give you also Catalan and Spanish books. Why? Because I'm Spanish. I'm Spanish and I'm Catalan as well. So I want to give you what influenced me culturally, linguistically, and also literary and also emotionally, you know, depending on the times of your lives. Sometimes some books resonate more or less with you. So okay, so there we go. We're going to start with the first one. So for the first one, you're going to see that I've got a lot of post-it notes. My first recommendation for January, it's Frankenstein, okay? I always buy Penguin editions because they tend to come with notes and introductory notes at the beginning. And I really love these notes because they give me extra information about what I'm reading. And I think that's crucial. So Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. This book was published, the 1st of January 1818. Okay, and it's ideal because it's one of the first books, not the only one, but one of the first books that opened the sci-fi, the science fiction genre. So as I said, if you already have a first certificate level, you can read that. It's not too hard. Okay, for February, I'm gonna recommend you one of my favorites, Jane Eyre, Charlotte Bronte. And why am I recommending you this one? This one is really good. It's one of my favorites because it talks about the Byronic hero, and also because he has the mad woman in the attic. And I really like this idea of the female role in society in Victorian times, and also how female roles have evolved over the years. This one was published on the 16th of October 1847, and I remember reading this at university and I really loved it. I really loved it also because I can connect it to the film. So that's one of the things, if you're a second language learner, one of the things you can do, you can support, you can complement your reading with the films, and then you can compare, you can contrast. Okay, it's a classic, but it's quite highly enjoyable. Bear in mind the language. Again, if you are a first certificate plus, you're gonna be okay with any of these books, but I'm gonna recommend you. Okay. In March, my other favorite, Wuthering Heights. That again, we have another of the sister, that's Emily Bronte. Probably this is one of my best books ever, and as you can see, I constantly revise it and revisit it because I like the quotes and I analyze it. I go back and forth all the time. This one was published the same year as Jane Eyre, but in December. Yeah, Jane Eyre was in October. This one was in December. I really like this one because you find here all the Victorian Gothic writing elements. You find all the not writing elements, just the Gothic elements. You have gloomy descriptions, you have dark settings, you have the characters are very wild. They explore all the limits of human psychology and the fight with the patriarchal society, you know, inheritance, otherness, culturally also it explores the outside the colonies. You know, it has a lot of elements, but obviously because it's got the Gothic romance in the middle. So for April, I will recommend you The Picture of Dorian Gray. This is another of my favorites. This is by Oscar Wilde. I remember reading this at uni as well, and I couldn't put it down. One of those things that you cannot put down. It can be a little bit complex when it comes down to certain references, aesthetics of the time, but the story itself is not difficult to follow, and it's a very good one because it's a reflection of Victorian society at the time, which wasn't very welcomed by it. In fact, Oscar Wilde had problems, and this book detonated his you know, he had to leave. He had to live in France. He was sentenced, and he was taken to court precisely because of the topics, because of the criticism to Victorian society, in exile. That's it. He had to be exiled, and also because he talks about these gay relationships that at the time were not very well looked at or well seen, so and accepted. So it's a very good one for a lot of reasons, and also because we have the figure of the kind of anti-hero here. Okay, the same happens in Wuthering Heights and in Jane Eyre. Modern anti-hero, maybe we could talk about Byronic heroes and a little bit of an anti-Byronic hero in some cases. So it all depends on how you analyze it. Okay, so for May, another one of my favorites. This looks pretty, it's new because my old version is at home with my parents and in Spanish. So this is, I purchased this recently to reread it again this summer. It's Dracula, obviously. Bram Stoker's Dracula, one of our favorites. It's good to read these kind of books that, you know, most of you will know, because of that, because of the empathy that you can create with the text. Who doesn't know about Dracula? Most people do. Okay, I don't want to globalize because there might be cultures that are not familiarized with these texts, but most of us do. You know, Europe, America, a lot of other countries, they are familiarized with Dracula, and because we have been exposed so much with TV programs, with different adaptations of it, we all know the story, so that makes the reading a little bit easier, so you're not really worried about the writing. Also, it's a very good example of epistolary novel, as we talked in another video. If you haven't seen that, go and check it out. And it's a very good for vocabulary, it's very good for the anti-hero again. Well, it's excellent. You will like it. You have to think that the film and the book are not exactly the same. I have to say that because the romance is in the film, not in the original book. Right, let's move on to the next month. We're gonna move now to June. In June, I've got Cuentos Góticos, a Spanish writer, Cuentos Góticos de Emilia Pardo Bazán. I don't have the book because I got the Kindle version, and it's very good. It's in Amazon, it's very cheap, and they were written around the early 1900s in Spain. Emilia Pardo Bazán was a Galician writer and a journalist, and she, you know, her texts are of high quality. It's just that because she was a woman, she didn't get the recognition that she should have had at the time, but that's another story. But they are very interesting, and they are a very good example of Gothic stories, these cuentos góticos that she wrote over different periods of time, of different years. She has other more famous novels, but I think it's interesting to see how she wrote Gothic, and she transformed the English Gothic that we inherited into the Spanish and Galician culture and folklore. In July, for July, since we're getting warmer as well, it's very nice to read To the Lighthouse. We have Virginia Woolf. It's not necessarily a Gothic book, but it has a lot of Gothic elements, right? This one was first printed, in 1927. And it's a very good example of the Gothic sublime, all the feelings that we get when we are in this open space, but also it's packed and full of symbols, motifs, the descriptions of the dark moments, memories in the objects, in the uncanny in our everyday lives. It's a fantastic example. Virginia controlled very well all the symbols. She knew what she was doing, so it's a very enjoyable read. Again, this is not a Penguin, it's an Oxford edition, but it also has notes, which makes the reading really interesting. So afterwards, or before, or both before and after you have read the story, I recommend that you read the notes, because it will bring light to the book and to the story. Okay, right, so we're gonna move on to a Spanish one now, another Spanish one. One of my first books I have ever read, Nada by Carmen Laforet. This one won the Nadal Prize in 1944. It was published in 1945, but it won a prize. I was exposed to this book when I was 16, and at the time nobody told me that this was Gothic, obviously, because it's classified as an existentialism novel. So there are Gothic elements all over. I would say there's more of a Gothic book than not existentialism, although existentialism is inside Gothic, because that's what the Gothic does. It questions everything, and it asks about the identity of the characters and of the characters. This is very good because it culturally shows us Barcelona after the Franco Civil War, and it shows decay. It shows what we were and what we've become. It shows we also have here the Bildungsroman from the main character, which is actually a negative Bildungsroman. But we have this learning process. There's a sensation that nothing happens, but really there's a lot going on, but you need to know how to find it out. And I think it's beautiful to read. It's not difficult. You can find the English version. So if you're not bilingual or trilingual, like in my case or some of my students' case, I recommend you find the translation also. But if you learn in Spanish, this is a good book to read, also because it's not complicated. It doesn't have complex syntax and complex vocabulary. It's very good. Okay, for September, another one of my favorites, and in this case we have a Catalan writer. We have Mirar Trencat by Mercè Rodoreda. This was published in the year I was born. This is how old I am, 1974. And this is fantastic. Again, this I read before going to university. I read this book. It was compulsory for passing the exams to access university, precisely. And I love this one. In English it's called Broken Mirror. So again, you can find the translation. So you can find the Spanish translation if you're trying to learn Spanish, but you can find the English translation if you are English and you don't want to be reading Spanish, for example, or you're learning English. But I recommend you always to read original texts, and if you're curious about the text and you don't know the other language, then yes, by the translation. You know, in translations we miss out sometimes the essence of the vocabulary, and some structures are not quite the same, and some concepts are not the same, but in any case, you can find the translation too. This is very good because it was a book written after the Civil War, but it's set up before the Civil War, and it's about three generations of a family and how they go down, the decay. So obviously the Gothic elements are in all the decaying period, from people to objects, and there are many objects that symbolize the Gothic elements, like there are mirrors, there are portraits, there are trees, you know, nature it's another character in itself. So this is a brilliant, brilliant book that you cannot put down, and it's not difficult to read either. October, we get into the Halloween month, and we have The Bloody Chamber by Angela Carter. This was published in 1979. If you notice, I'm kind of picking a lot of females for the Spanish writers. It doesn't mean that there aren't any male writers, it's that these are the ones that influenced me the most. This one is a collection of short stories based on fairy tales, but what Angela does is a deconstruction of the fairy tales. So everything is bloody, everything is not what it seems, they don't necessarily have happy endings. And it's not that I really liked it at the time. I was a little bit shocked, and I was a little bit moved, and I was a little bit how to say, uncomfortable reading it, but it's something that after you read it, you never forget it. And the elements and the descriptions, they get to you, and they get to you in a way, as I said, that you can't forget that. And every time that you watch something patriarchal or something that we still have happy endings, like fairy tales or stories for kids, then you think maybe not like that, you know. Sorry, as I was saying, so maybe it's not that it's either you like it or you don't, or you think about it afterwards. After some time, after some years, I still think about The Bloody Chamber, and I have to reread it again myself. Why not? So we have November. In November, I'm going to show you 2 books because it's from the same author, and I've talked about it before. I've done an interview to her. I'm going to bring you someone who's alive. So Tracy Fahey, The Unheimlich Maneuver, or Unheimlich Maneuvers in the Dark. I mean, this one has just got a lot of short stories. This one's got some stories, and also has the writer's notes, which, you know, I really love, because I really love seeing what is the intention behind the text, and to see if actually when I'm reading, I'm kind of right with the intention of the writer and the text. And as I said, this is a modern writing. This is she was first published in 2016, and it's a lovely reading for those who don't want to really be reading classics and who want to be reading living authors and people who you can actually contact, which is something that it was part of my project last year and still is, to get students contacting real authors and real writers, real teachers, so they can see how the language nowadays is being used, but also that they are approachable. And by doing that, we're creating this empathy that we need when learning languages. Okay, the next one is an academic book. Okay, so for December, I am recommending to you this very special book. This book is written by Xavier Aldana. It's called Spanish Gothic. It's a book about, it's an analysis of the Spanish Gothic from the beginning to our days, and it's very beautiful. I mean, this cover is lovely as well. This was written in 2017, so it's pretty new, and it analyzes a lot of these books that I've shown you here. It analyzes some of them, and it analyzes TV programs. It analyzes the Gothic in Spain, but obviously to analyze the Gothic in Spain, we need to compare it with the English Gothic and how this influenced Spain directly from, you know, going through France and getting to us. So it's beautiful. I love this book. I need to do a review on it properly, and I will do, I promise. It's one of my pending tasks, because it really deserves that, and it's something that you can keep checking. It's not complicated to read. It's only in English, even though it's a Spanish writer, but Xavier teaches in the University of Manchester, in Metropolitan University of Manchester, and obviously his English is almost native. Yeah, it's brilliant. I hate this native thing, you know. The native, non-native is someone who is a professional, and he writes beautifully. You wouldn't tell where he's from. So yes, these are all my recommendations for the year. I know that it's a lot, and I know that 12 months, maybe you don't read, and some people read once a year, and they read in their holidays, and they don't read monthly. But why don't you take the challenge and see if you can actually read a book a month, and see what you make of it, and see how much language do you learn as well, how much vocabulary and expressions. So if you like this list, let me know. If you are going to read something else, let me know too. What are your suggestions? Do you suggest any readings for me as well? That would be quite interesting. And if you want to know more about second language learning and critical thinking, which is what I do through the Gothic as well, then why don't you download my free guide called, it's a little bit long, I need to read it, Work on Your Critical Thinking and Your Language Skills by Reading Gothic Literature. It's a free download where I'm going to give you a few ideas depending on the level you've got, and some recommendations of books that you can either use in class if you're a teacher, or books that you can actually read if you are learning the language, okay, the second language acquisition. Right, so this is it for me today. It's not been too long. I think we are within the time, more or less, as always. I hope that you enjoy this list, and again, leave me the comments, like if you like the video, thumbs up, share with others. This will help me greatly to be known. And remember that I will write my article as well that goes with that in more detail about all the books. And follow me on all my social media, send me emails. All the details are down here in the video. So thank you very much. Have a happy beginning of the year, and I hope that you're thinking about which is your best favorite one of these Gothic books, and if you have any others, please let me know. Okay, see you soon.